I'm Alicia.
And I'm Maddie.
And welcome to the Fangirl Diaries, a podcast where we talk about our obsessions,
Reminisce about our teen icons,
and explore the books, movies, and shows that made us the incredibly nerdy 30-somethings that we now are.
Hey Alicia! Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day to you too!
Well, kind of. But yeah, this was our Valentine's weekend romantic trip to go and see the film of the moment, the film of the weekend.
I assumed that you and Ben had actual valid Valentine's Day plans because if we're honest, we saw this on the 15th.
Yes.
we were like, we're not going to sully either of our actual Valentine's Days by putting our husbands through Wuthering Heights. Although Ben, we should say, did come with us to the film.
Yeah, Ben was super keen.
Ben was super keen. What do you think was the ratio of, because Ben was sort of like, am I the only guy in this cinema?
Yeah, I think it was like 90% women.
We should say there were 3 of us, so 3 gals plus Ben.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think the ratio was probably as expected in the cinema. It was pretty full. Like it was definitely it had plenty of people turned up to come and see it in opening weekend. So I'm thinking it's going to do quite well, but we'll see.
It was completely packed. And we went on the Sunday night, which I thought might be a little bit quieter because Sunday night's not normally a sort of movie going out to the cinema type night, and we went to a relatively late showing, but it was full. I couldn't see an empty seat, to be honest. It was really, really packed, and the nerd in me that was looking at various things on the internet this morning found that Wuthering Heights has already recouped its entire budget just on opening weekend.
There you go.
Which I believe was a cool 80 million. So it's doing well. It's doing well.
Well, then, what were your expectations going in? I guess it's been a lot of hype around this movie, but also you actually know the book of Wuthering Heights, whereas I do not. So, what were you kind of expecting or hoping from this movie before we talk about our actual reactions to it?
So wait, hang on, Maddie. Can we just clarify? Have you never read Wuthering Heights?
No.
Oh my gosh! I don't know why I didn't know that. Oh, maybe that was it. You were in a different English A-level class to me.
Yeah, it just always seemed like one of those like classics that was probably going to be too long for me to actually enjoy reading, and therefore I never chose to read it.
Okay, in that case, let me start with a bit of a background monologue on my relationship with this book, because I think it is relevant to what the film was actually trying to achieve, and is probably a reason behind why I enjoyed it. I'm so not part of the reactionary brigade that thinks that this is an abomination. And there's so much stuff on the internet about, Emily Bronte died of tuberculosis, but this is still the worst thing that's ever happened to her. Like, no. That's an incredibly histrionic reaction. So I read Wuthering Heights when I was 17. And it was one of our set texts for English literature A-level. And it was genuinely one of the most enjoyable experiences of my life to be doing that English A-level course. I then did English at university twice. Both of my degrees are in English literature. So really, you would think, given my profile, that I would be ready to absolutely trash talk this film.
Yeah, but that's not how you are. You like some really smart and some taking liberties with the source material.
I'm not ready to trash talk this at all, but that's because I think I agree with the way that Emerald Fennel has described what she was trying to achieve with this film. So she read it at a similar time to me. She read it as a teenager, and she has talked about feeling a certain way about the book. Like if you remove the incredibly complex narrative structure, if you remove the kind of multi-generational storylines, the book itself is actually very complicated and really quite dense and quite difficult. And when it was on our A-level syllabus, I remember coming to it with a notion that it was some great love story. The idea of Cathy and Heathcliff sort of existed culturally
Yeah,
outside
for
of the
sure.
book.
Yeah.
We all know the Kate Bush song. Heathcliff is a sort of stereotype of this um, hot proto-romantic billowing shirt man, and
Yeah.
that was what I was bringing to quite literally being given the book in my hands in the classroom, age 17. The book itself is nothing like that. Nothing like that at all. The relationship between Cathy and Heathcliff is really buried in the middle half, maybe the middle third of this book, um, and is surrounded, I think, weighed down by lots of additional narrative material. What this film does is go, let's strip away everything else and just make this about that core content, which when you're 17, bear in mind, I was reading this as part of the generation that probably the last book I read was something like Twilight before it. So I wanted to read Wuthering Heights for the grand love story, for the romantic tragedy, and it is in there. But this film has gone, let's just take that and give the people what they want.
And then I guess I can understand then why people who do like the complex narrative structure, who do appreciate the kind of more high literature and the way it was written and the way it's constructed and the way it deals with, I understand that essentially this story like stops halfway through in the movie and that there's another whole generation and it's about the effects of what Cathy and Heathcliff's relationship had on the next generation, and all that is completely gone. I guess if you liked the book because of all those more complex things, then of course you wouldn't like the film because it explicitly is trying to remove all of that. But as you say, if you're able to just say, no, that was the interesting bit of the book and that's the interesting bit culturally, then yeah, why not focus on that part?
Yeah, I just think a faithful adaptation of the book, which there's absolutely a place for, would suit a different format, would suit a very different director, would probably suit an 8-part BBC adaptation, needs to be embraced as something truly multi-generational. It needs to do like a House of the Dragon style adaptation where the interest sits with the actors and their talent genuinely in both generations. This is a star vehicle for Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi. Yes, there are two younger actors in it, but they're in it for what, 10 minutes? It's the lovely guy from Adolescence. I said
Yeah.
the sweet boy from that murderous.
He is quite sweet. He
That's
seems sweet. That was the point.
that sweet 12-year-old murderer. That boy is in it, who again, like that is an incredibly talented young person, but he's there for about 10 minutes. But yeah, if you were to adapt this a different way, you need to balance the star power and the acting talent genuinely across the multi-generational stuff. You need a director who's interested in slow, considered camera work and a very, very, very slow build of tension. The book has things like fingers tapping on a window, and the way a branch snaps outside. And there's just really a long-term sense of like malaise and anger. And this, whereas this film is a music video, isn't it? It's a music video.
Yeah, I suppose so. I suppose so. I mean, I think that's one of the things that people noticed very early on with the trailers and things coming out is that the visual style was very much right. We're throwing away any pretense of like historical accuracy in a way that we're throwing away any pretense of like sticking to the book. We're also throwing away historical accuracy in costuming and design, and we might hint at the time period with our like general idea of styling, but we're not scared to like have completely crazy off the wall outfits that would never be made, that are essentially from a modern day runway, or buildings with shiny plastic walls and things that it's almost like I was reminded a bit of what's the Marie Antoinette movie?
Oh, the one with Kirsten Dunst.
Yeah. Where it's like it's giving you this like modern day interpretation of the visual style that we enjoy now, but not trying to do anything historically accurate about the time period, really.
Yeah, I thought this film exists essentially in a post-Bridgerton universe
Mm,
where it's been decided that we're culturally receptive to this new wave of visual material where it is a period piece and we're sort of interested in a nod to the period. Films like Moulin Rouge have that in it, where
yeah.
we're nodding to a historical time and place, but it looks like the costumes have a dash of historical accuracy, but it also looks like there's a hefty dose of like Dolce and Gabbana. A lot of Kathy's outfits in this film look like they were made by John Galliano in like the 90s.
Yeah, yeah.
What is this? What are the visual reference points here? It's absolutely wild.
And I think
Um,
what they were trying to do, and what clearly was, as you said, what Emerald Fennell was trying to do is create a sense of a feeling and an atmosphere rather than being tied to accuracy and literature.
okay, so if we go back to your initial reaction to this, like Maddie, you never read this book, so am I right in thinking you had no idea what happened?
No, because it's as you said, it's so in the cultural imagination. I did have some concepts of what happens. Like I knew that Kathy died. I knew that that happened halfway through the book. So I kind of was intrigued as to whether that would be the same in the film. It's not. They leave it to the end. They basically only do like part of the story of the book, I understand. I knew that um I knew ideas around the idea of the obsession and the romance and this being like two very flawed people who are obsessed with each other, but essentially are very cruel to each other, and that it kind of ruins the people around them. So I knew that. I knew it was set on the moors and that there was going to be a lot of rain and mist and heaths. Um,
There was
so,
so much rain. There was so much rain and mist.
so I think I had like a cultural understanding of roughly what this was, both from like the the atmosphere of the romance and the rain and the mist, but also this idea that, oh, in the book there's a lot more. I knew that there was like, for example, I had it in my head already. I knew it was mostly told from Nellie's perspective. I know that piece of information, but I don't know why I know that piece of information. So yeah, I knew a lot of like bits and pieces about it, having even though I haven't read it. And I think the reason I haven't read it is because one of the things I knew about it was very long and complex and like complicated.
Well, so considering that this basically served up the main storyline and let's call it the main vibes, did you enjoy it? Is
I,
this is it for you?
yeah, I did enjoy it. I did enjoy it. And I think I enjoyed it because I was going into it not expecting higher literature, right? Like we've had all these conversations go in advance where so many people have been up in arms about, oh my God, it's not going to be true to the books. Oh my God, look at these crazy costumes in these pictures. I can't believe they're doing this. I can't believe it's going to be this shocking. You know, there was this whole thing about, oh my God, it's so shocking and wild and kinky like Saltburn and all this stuff that I was like I was prepared for that. And actually, I think it was probably less shocking and less um out there than maybe people had made me think it was going to be. Like to me, it wasn't that crazy. Like there were moments of wackiness and intensity that we'll get into, but actually I did enjoy it, and I think she could have pushed it a bit further. It could have been even more wild if she'd wanted it to be. And so I think maybe the conversations in advance have put me in a frame of mind of like, this is going to be so out there. And then it really wasn't actually that crazy.
I actually completely agree with that. And I think it's worth us addressing like what is the shock factor on this? And there's been so much press in advance. There's so much conversation around this. I think the shock factor is its distance from the source material. That
Yeah.
if you were to go into the cinema expecting an Emily Bronte adaptation, which and you've already said this, who is like as in like who has been deaf to the press around this. Like, if you're going into the cinema and you're parting with your shockingly almost now £20 to see this, then you should know what you're getting.
Yeah.
But I think that's the quote unquote shock. Whereas when you take the actual film, I agree with you. I was sort of waiting to be more perturbed than I was.
Yeah. I think Saltburn was much more extreme than
Yeah,
this.
yeah, I agree. I agree. I still think this has all the hallmarks of what I'm now understanding to be Emerald Fennell's style. Like, she's really interested in the grotesque. She's
Yeah.
really interested in like pushing aspects of people's like sexual fantasies. But like you said, all of that was in Saltburn and more. And this is, and also all of that is in Emily Bronte, maybe apart from some of the more explicit sort of nods to BDSM that I feel like were a very modern take on this. But
Sure. Yeah.
yeah, I wasn't as shocked as I thought I was going to be.
I think the thing that I really enjoyed, and I think I kind of came out saying this, is like it really did make you feel things like physically. And I think that's one of the things that, yeah, she really cares about. She clearly enjoys taking the like physical aspect of being a human being, whether that is like pain and the blood of like killing an animal and the like physicality of like of like your body and the grotesque, as you say, alongside like sexuality, which is a very physical thing, bringing those things together alongside like the wet and the cold and the rain. She's really like taking and is very successfully able to take like the physical sensations of what it is to be a human and make you experience those on screen through a visual medium. Like, it was very not intellectual and like heady and in your mind and making you think. It was making you like feel physically. And that's clearly what she enjoys doing with her movies, is like understanding that a human experience is a physical one in all these different aspects and bringing those together in a way that can be uncomfortable, but is well done and is interesting.
Yeah, it's an incredibly tactile film in the sense of it's so interested in um, its physical environment, like the prank that they play on each other of putting eggs that crack in each other's beds.
Yeah.
There's so much of like fingers in mouths or fingers in fish.
Yeah.
It's so incredibly gross. There's so many close up.
Visceral.
Yeah, there's close up shots of maggots, slugs, rolling of dough. That when I was watching it, I actually thought, oh, I wonder if they'll be showing this in like IMAX 4D or whatever it is now. You know, when you're like, okay, well,
Oh,
you'd all get sprayed with the rain, and then maybe there's like a sort of slug that crawls over you or something. Like, it feels like that sort of movie. There's so many um, grim things in it that exist in the physical world. And we haven't even got on to talking about the kind of audio quality of it, which is the Charlie XCX soundtrack that we'll come to. But yeah, it's very, very tactile and visual and gross in that
yeah.
regard.
In that way, but also in the way that says, look, life is about like death and sex and pain and cold and heat and all these like, things that when you think about literature, you don't necessarily think about those things. You think more in like a kind of like that life is more intellectual or life is about something more lofty. And actually she's almost saying, no, life is about like, yeah, lust and pain and gluttony and all those like very base things.
Yep, which are in the book, which is why I think there is a counter argument to, how unfaithful this is to the book. Like, if you were, as part of your A-level revision or GCSE revision or whatever level you did this book at, and you wrote one of those crib sheets where you put the headings like themes, like the themes of this novel, the things you're going to be looking at are desire, obsession, violence. You're going to have a whole category for pathetic fallacy. All of those things are in there to the max. Like
Right.
the number of rain towers that this film used, I don't think I can remember enough frames in which people were dry. They're just in a constant storm, and you can't miss the desire element, the violent element. Those things are all in there. Like, yes, okay, she didn't use the frame narration that the book uses, but so many of those key themes and key sort of motifs were held to, right down to like the carving of Kathy with her alternative surnames on the window. Like that's a direct lift from the book. So there was enough, I think, that was maintained that says we're going to try and do some justice to Emily Bronte. That I'm not sure it deserves this completely being dragged through the mud of this is a complete departure from the novel. It's not completely.
Yeah, so I think as a piece of art and like whether I enjoyed it, that's one thing I did enjoy. She's very successfully created like physical emotions and physical kind of feelings, which yeah, I want something from my art to make me feel something. And it definitely did that, which is yeah, which is impressive. And I think the other thing is I like an interestingly visual movie, and it was extremely interestingly shot and um colored and kind of um yeah it's styled, and we talked about the like departure from historical accuracy in that way, but by departing from historical accuracy you create something that is dramatic visually, and again that's something that I enjoy in movies. So yeah, I did enjoy it. I think I would put this in like, this is not going to hit like some one of my top films ever. It's not going to suddenly jump into one of being one of my favorite films, but I'm glad I went to see it, and it it moved me in a kind of artistic way, which is what I want.
Yeah, I genuinely think this film is a matter of personal taste and also just what kind of experience you feel like you're ready to buy into in the cinema. Like, this is event cinema at the best, as in everyone was keen to go to this. I love going to a cinema experience where the cinema is full.
Yeah.
People were kind of openly making a lot of sounds.
But
We'll
like in
talk
a,
about.
but in an engaged way, like no,
Yeah,
people weren't distracted, they were responding to the movie.
yeah, yeah, 100%. I love going to see a film that then everybody wants to talk about afterwards. Um, but if you're not in the mood for a sort of MTV style, very, very costume led Charlie XCX soundtrack version of Wuthering Heights, don't go and see this film. You will not enjoy it. But
Yeah.
I very much was. And I also think that my tastes have changed slightly from like, okay, this is just my immediate theory. But before having a baby, when I had way more time, I would have happily sat through like a 12-part slow BBC adaptation of this. I would probably still would. But I find now that as I'm increasingly time poor, I sort of have shifted into that. Like I can see why maybe I've become a little bit more Gen Z, that my kind of attention for something is in more demand. And so I will happily just like lap something up in 2 hours. It's like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was so the perfect viewer for this on Sunday night. And I think we all were.
All right, let's talk about then the actual core of the story and the what, or at least the core that Emerald Fennell chose to take out of it, which is the romance between Kathy and Heathcliff. How, or the obsession necessarily, not romance always. How did you feel about that relationship, about how the actors did it, about how it was put together? Did it satisfy everything that you wanted or not quite?
So this was the only bit that I was nervous for. I could tell what the kind of visuals were going to be and how the film was going to be pitched from the trailer, but I couldn't tell from the trailer if I was fully going to buy into basically Jacob Elordi and Margot Robbie's chemistry,
Mm,
and if they weren't going to sell that to me, then the film doesn't exist to me. Like
yeah.
it, if you're going to hang the film on that, it has to work. I really did think that it worked.
Hmm.
Um, and I was fully bought into their relationship. We start with them as young people. The only reason I was incredibly distracted by the um, younger cast's acting was I just couldn't get past the bad wig that they stuck on younger Kathy. Like the budget on this film being what it was, couldn't someone get that like 10-year-old girl a better wig? It was so
Oh.
I was like, what's happened to you? You've been shortchanged. So, but we follow their relationship from them as children to, as you said, Kathy's really quite horrible death. Um, and I thought their chemistry when we're working with the older actors was very strong. You know, props to everybody on the kind of press tour and everything. They're like, oh, is this real? Like, do they genuinely have chemistry? Yeah, they do. Yeah, yeah, they do. Um, and I also felt that there was a truly emotional level to it. Like, it's not that these are just two people who are hot doing hot scenes. I bought their devastation when when Heathcliff deserts Kathy. I bought their mutual devastation as they realize they just can't be together. They've made a series of bad choices that means
Mm.
their relationship can't prosper. And I really felt for them, even though they're hateful people. I
Mm.
really felt for
Yeah.
them, which is
Yeah.
which is the note the book and indeed this film I think tries to strike. And if it doesn't, then it's not tragic. You don't
Hmm.
think, oh, damn, I really need these two people to sort it out.
Yeah.
And just my final thought on this, coming back to historical accuracy, is we've talked about how this is wildly historically inaccurate in terms of its costuming, etc. Um, but something it has really maintained is it is a historical truth that the tragedy here are that these are two people who made choices that at the time could not be undone. Like if this was the modern day and the person you really love returns from, I don't know, their gap year or whatever, would be the modern
Yeah.
equivalent.
Wherever he's gone to go and like make some money.
He's he's gone on secondment somewhere for a few years.
Yeah.
He's been posted to Singapore or whatever. But if that person then came back, you could extricate yourself from your relationship, nowadays from your marriage. You could even extricate yourself if you'd had children from that situation. Like this is all possible in the modern day. Difficult, but possible. Whereas the tragedy that the film is trying to suggest is that Kathy can't undo that choice. She has
Yeah.
married Edgar Linton. Heathcliff comes back, and she is truly trapped. She can't get out of it. And equally, his then, let's call it revenge marriage to Isabella, equally can't be undone. So it has maintained the historical accuracy that, like, that's the problem, right? These two people have put barriers up around themselves through their choices that they can't undo, which means they can't be together. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's maintained the accuracy that if you were to compare this to something like BBC's Normal People, which is the adaptation, obviously, still from the book, when those two characters are apart from each other for several years, they keep contact through emails, they message each other, they can speak on the phone. This film captures the devastation that when Heathcliff leaves, like Kathy can't like message him. He's
Yeah.
gone.
Can't, doesn't know where he is at all. Yeah. There's no turning back from it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of desolation is part of the tragedy and kind of pushes her to make again some of the choices that she does. Like she truly thinks he could be dead and gone forever.
Mm.
Which is that something in the kind of modern communication universe we just don't have. And the film kept that. I mean, it would be remarkable if it had got rid of that, but that's
Yeah.
maintained.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that felt like an interesting choice, and I'd be interested to know how similar or different this is in the book, is that the two houses, Wuthering Heights and the Linton House, seem extremely isolated. Like not just isolated as in like, we're on these moors and they're in the middle of nowhere. We really have no connection to the rest of society and the outside world, except for like maybe that first 5 minutes in the village with the hangings. And there's like a mention later of the hangings and the idea that Kathy's dad goes to the pub and gets drunk or whatever. But essentially, for like 99% of the movie, we are only in these two houses and in the moors between them with no connection to society. So it almost felt like all of these decisions were being enforced upon them by a society, but the society didn't really exist. Like, who was there to judge whether they broke up? Nobody. Nobody visited those houses. Nobody else existed. Like, it almost felt like we were watching yeah, these people that never saw anyone else other than the people in their own household, and yet they were still bound to society's rules somehow.
It's actually really interesting and is relatively true to the book. This is not the world of a Jane Austen where society is physically ever present.
No.
So people receive visitors constantly. You feel like they have such busy, active social lives. They're always visiting each other and knocking on each other's doors and taking tea.
Going on a promenade and,
Yeah,
going to the
yeah,
next ball. Yeah.
yeah. No, the geography of the houses is the same in the book as it is in the film, which is they're something like 5 miles apart. These are neighbors, and
Yeah.
it's a significant horse ride, as we see in the film, back and forth. Or I think it's mentioned that Kathy sort of hasn't visited her father in several years, and he is her neighbor.
Yeah.
So you're right, that jaunt that he always goes on to the nearby village is a significant D&V exploration. Yeah, he's got to really get there. Um, and it's that sense of desolation that informs the characters and the tragedy. And we have to grasp that. Otherwise, when Heathcliff says to Kathy's dead body, do not leave me in this abyss, we have to really feel like it's a desolate abyss. Otherwise, you'd
Yeah.
think, oh, come on, Heathcliff, like, why don't you just take yourself down the pub, go and find your friends? Like, it will be fine. It's not
Yeah.
fine. They are in the middle of desolate moors. There's nothing around. So that is accurate, I think. The book made it feel that way.
Yeah, yeah, it's just interesting that despite the fact that they're so isolated, they still feel that those decisions are binding decisions and they can't break them. I mean, I guess they do break them in that Kathy and Heathcliff really do have an extramarital affair, which is probably a very that's a very, very serious big deal, the fact that that was happening. And that probably only is possible because they are not a part of society, because they are so remote and separate. But yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know.
that's true. And the book, with its additional layer of characters, and it has more people in it, I suppose feels a little bit more active. And indeed, the frame narration of the book is that somebody from the outside comes to visit. That's the point. We
Yes.
we the reader are brought in by way of a character who's completely gone from the film, called Mr. Lockwood, who arrives and is like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's sort of like anthropological tourism. Or Luke makes a great observation about it, which is that in the book, this guy, Mr. Lockwood, feels like he wanders in from a Jane Austen novel, expecting the same thing, and
Yeah.
finds he's in a completely different universe.
Yeah.
Um, which I think the film captures that universe quite well. Okay, what did you think about the main love story, our two leads? Did they sell it to you?
They did. They absolutely did. Um, but I think this is where I think probably I was expecting more like extremes in terms of like what people had said that this was going to be so, out there and so crazy that actually, whilst there was like quite extreme sexual stuff going on in like the outer side of the story, like we saw the like a stable guy and the maid, having some BDSM relationship. And Heathcliff's clearly, when he's with Isabella, is like, I mean, insane, like really extreme stuff going on there. But actually, the relationship between Heathcliff and Kathy felt more like a traditional romance. And they had this like massive montage of all their like sex scenes. It was like going from one place to another place to another place. But like those were all quite like vanilla sex scenes, right? They were romantic and loving and passionate and obsessive, but not in any way shocking. I mean, we didn't really even see much nudity from either of the two of them. Like
Nope, not at all.
it was all quite, yeah, as you say, like Bridgerton-esque, in the carriage and then in the woods and whatever. And it was romantic, and I felt the passion between them, but yeah, it wasn't as shocking perhaps as maybe I was expecting. That shock was coming from other relationships and other places, whereas their romance was more almost traditional.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to talk about two aspects of the press around this, one of which I agree with and one of which I don't. So there is a lot of discussion that these two people don't have genuine chemistry on screen. That I think is total trash. I bought the chemistry. I think Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi together in this really were giving it their 100%. And actually as a pair were very strong. And to do these roles, you also have to really, really commit. You and I have talked before about there has to be roles where you can't look remotely embarrassed because it won't work. And the character of Heathcliff is a really difficult one to play because he is sort of literature's hot man, and particularly when now we're living in an era of we want the bad boy and the kind of Byronic hero is having its renaissance
Yeah.
now with Book Talk. So Heathcliff could have just been quite a cardboard cutout hottie. But I thought Jacob Elordi really, really credibly humanized him a bit more. I thought he did a very difficult Yorkshire accent, particularly coming from Australia.
Yeah.
And he didn't just feel like camera fodder. As someone who's, a remarkably tall, hot guy. I thought he brought more depth to the character, which he kind of had to do, otherwise this was going to fall flat.
Well, I kind of thought he was at his best when he was playing the cruel side of Heathcliff, like the really like nasty side with Isabella and like the kind of revenge and I thought he did that side of it really well. I actually haven't seen yet the recent Frankenstein with him in it, but I'm really excited to. And I can see he's got that like kind of he's got that darkness that you need from Heathcliff, and that was the part that I actually thought worked really well.
The second bit of press that I do agree with, and I hate myself for this one. Oh, so it's a really hard one. It's very difficult to cast Kathy as somebody older than their early 20s. And Margot Robbie is my age, so she's like mid to late 30s. And there's lots that she brings to this role that really works. Like, she is gorgeous. She's magnetic. You can completely understand Heathcliff's obsession with her.
Obsession, yeah.
The only thing that's very difficult is so much of Kathy's petulance. She has a much more childish nature than Heathcliff does. And in the book, that really works because she's a young person.
Right.
They both are. Now, Jacob Elordi's in his 20s, but Margot Robbie is a good decade older. And I found it difficult to watch somebody who carries themselves in the scenes where she's with Edgar Linton. She really looks like, the lady of the house. She's statuesque. She's beautiful. She's kind of regal. You almost expect that petulance from a little bit like the young lady who's playing Isabella.
Yes.
And so it's hard to see the kind of bitchiness and cattiness and erratic nature of Kathy play out on somebody who just looks like they've maybe spent a bit more time in the world.
That's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't like actively noticed that as an issue. I think they made some comment about her already being of like spinster age or something when she married Linton to kind of, I guess, explain the fact that she looks a bit older.
They did. They had to put that in there, didn't they?
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, she's already past it. And I thought,
and so it didn't even actually really occur to me. And almost, I guess, I was able to look past her brattiness and her petulance and whatever as just being a product of living in such an isolated way, with simply being on her own with like, Nellie and Heathcliff and her father, and that she hadn't been able to grow up and become more mature because she'd never been around anyone who gave her a good example of what being an adult was. So actually it didn't necessarily bother me as someone who didn't know that she was meant to be in her 20s or whatever.
Yeah, and it wasn't to the detriment of the film overall. It was just one note on casting, and of course it couldn't be got round because I think Margot Robbie produced this film. This very much feels like something she wanted to do with Emerald Fennell. It's very much a vehicle for her as an actress, and she does so much right in it. But it's just, if you were to take her and her star power out of it, and you were just blindly starting from the beginning and
You
casting
wouldn't
Wuthering
cast it like
Heights,
that. Yeah.
yeah, I maybe wouldn't have reached for Margot Robbie in this role. But
The
when
only
she is there,
thing,
she does a good
yeah,
job.
yeah, the only thing I thought when I was thinking about her and her role was that because we know of her as such a star, she's such a big name, she's such a big face, you know who she is. I felt almost like she was held back in some of the more extreme parts of Emerald Fennell's vision because she is Margot Robbie, and she was, she wouldn't have been able to put herself in the position of like Isabella, some of the more like degrading situations, or like, I don't know what the discussion around nudity was, but I know she's done things in the past, but she's now this like presence and this like something bigger than herself, and this like Barbie Margot Robbie wholesome star, that almost it felt like maybe there were some things that Emerald Fennell might have wanted to do that couldn't be done because it was Margot Robbie.
Absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. This, I think, would have looked very different if this was, if we look at something like White Lotus, where you can cast relative unknowns in some of those roles, and that younger acting talent is happy to really sort of push themselves, and try different things. And you're right, they're not coming to it with very, very extensive clauses in their contract about what
and a
do.
reputation to keep. And we're not saying, I'm not saying that people should be forced into doing things more extreme than they want to do in film, right? With that, it gets us into very bad situations. But it was something I was aware of, that I was like, yeah, Margot Robbie's not going to do not going to do something more extreme in a film where there were a lot of extremes.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Also have to give immense props to her, because I think she had just had a baby when filming this.
Gosh.
I think maybe she's like 3 months postpartum filming this.
Gosh.
And I'm just amazed that she was like on set on time each day. But also it's an incredibly like sexy role to play, and she's fabulous in it. But I can't think of a time in someone's life when you feel genuinely less like you want your photo taken. Genuinely less like you want to be wearing a really busty dress. My experience would have been like, oh God, don't look at me for months.
I mean, she looked amazing. So.
She looked amazing. But she also had to emit that kind of aura that is, I'm the sexiest person in Yorkshire. And she did.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, she is probably one of the most stunning women in the whole of, the earth right now. So, she's in a privileged position.
Yeah.
All right. So the one thing we've hinted at and we haven't talked about specifically was the soundtrack and this like MTV movie style kind of vibe that it gave us. What did you feel about the soundtrack?
Oh God, I loved it. I loved it. But again, I came to the film because they had that right from the trailer.
Yeah.
And I knew it was Charlie XCX, so I knew what sort of thing we were getting here. But I loved the fact that it was a particular pairing between her as an artist. Like it's almost like, rather than having Hans Zimmer or rather than having John Williams, you have one artist, in this case Charlie XCX, who's doing the soundtrack. And I actually preferred that to more of a Baz Luhrmann style film, where you're just bringing in sort of the top hits from 20 different contemporary artists. I liked the consistency of it being a contemporary artist, but she was sort of handed the entire soundtrack, bar I think kind of one or two bits.
Oh, that's kind of true, but there was also a lot of repeated sections that were like folk music. There was like a more traditional, and I'm interested to look up where that came from and how that fit in, because there were quite a few. There was a specific song that was like a kind of traditional English folk song that was used, which was a very different feeling to the more like electronic pop, grungy kind of sound of Charlie XCX.
Yeah, you're right. That's someone different. So when I went on Spotify afterwards, it's one song that comes in on repeat. I know
Yeah.
exactly the one you mean. It sounds like a sort of like Irish kind of folk
Hmm.
music. There's a beautiful, beautiful ethereal kind of voice on there that works really well. That was a lovely addition to the soundtrack. But did I like that kind of more synth like bass element of Charlie XCX? Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but I showed up wanting it. So, again, I was the perfect audience for this.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought about when I was thinking about stuff that we like and that we respond well to. This might come out of left field for you, but it reminded me of in like I don't know whether it was the story or the vibe, but weirdly reminded me of the film Cruel Intentions,
Uh-huh, I see
which
that.
was one of our like kind of noughties, 90s noughties obsessions. And it's like this couple of like intense petulant and intense obsessive people that like use other people around them, particularly like more innocent people than themselves, to their own kind of advantage and their own weird kind of sex games.
Mhm.
And it really reminded me of the vibe of that. And I wonder whether that's something that Emerald Fennell had. Well, she again is also our age, so probably did know that film well. It was kind of like a reference point in my mind, but I was like, yeah, it's got a similar kind of vibe in a different way.
Definitely. I actually hadn't thought of Cruel Intentions, but now that you say it, that and also that 90s aesthetic was used a lot. So there were a lot of chokers, gothic crosses. At one point, Margot Robbie's character is wearing a veil that's not dissimilar from one of the characters in Cruel Intentions. I think it's Sarah Michelle Gellar's character wears a similar sort
Yeah.
of headpiece. Um, and yeah, that's definitely a great reference point. It's if you like those kind of films where you don't mind sitting through characters being quite hateful.
Yes.
This film, I think, feels similar to watching The Favorite.
Yeah.
Um, and it's in that and that film as well has that same interest in kind of the grotesque of people being horribly violent and vicious to each other and cruel.
Yeah, and
Um,
food and yeah,
yeah,
opulence. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's in that kind of category. Um, if you don't mind that from your cinema, then this is there. But there is also, and this is how I've been trying to persuade Luke to engage with it. Um, there is also a serious interest in film in there somewhere. So from Emerald Fennell, I think she thinks she's doing something really art house. Luke's quite critical and says it's art house for stupid people, which I think is not fair. But like there were some bits where I thought, oh, that's quite clever. Like when Heathcliff reappears from his journeys abroad, when he
Mm.
like on the most basic level, he appears out of the mist, right? Do you remember that? He comes into
Yeah, yeah.
behind her out of the mist. But he is framed in a particular way, and his costume that he's wearing, down to the very accessory that he has that kind of walking stick. He's meant to look like the Caspar David Friedrich painting,
Mm.
which is so very much a visual reference point for that time
Mm.
period, for this kind of for the proto-romantic kind of wandering man that Heathcliff is meant to be. And also at the start of the film, we should say we were in this packed cinema. Do you remember at the start, Maddie, where the audio starts before you see any of the film?
Yeah, yeah.
And
And you think it's someone having
you
sex,
think
but
it's
it's
someone having
not.
sex. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was actually, I think maybe that was even the cleverest moment, or maybe that was the most shocking moment of the film, actually. Um, you think you are hearing someone having sex, and because of the press around this film, so many people in the cinema went, "Oh, that is in like, of course." you know,
Yeah.
I heard a lot of sort of, "Oh, here we go."
Giggling. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and then it comes in with the visuals, and it's actually someone being hung. It's a scene of a public hanging. And I
Yeah.
actually heard the intake of breath from everyone around me, like, oh, we were so wrong.
Yeah.
We had walked into that trap, and I thought that was, I don't know, I thought that was quite a clever moment. And that was
It was
shocking. That was
it
horrible.
was it was clever and it was shocking. I wasn't entirely sure what point that first scene was trying to make, though. It set the scene of I guess, the themes that we've been talking about. So maybe this was the point. It set the theme of sex and death being connected, physicality being connected in like throughout the whole of life, and also people's voyeurism for both death and sex. But yeah, the fact that we had that bit at the beginning, but it was so isolated from the rest of the movie, I wasn't quite convinced about what the point was at the beginning.
Yeah, retrospectively, once you've watched the rest of the film, I think that's true because you're right to say that is really the only time we see a sort of wider cast of characters, that there's any extras, and that we're in a sort
Yeah.
of village environment. It seems like it was designed to show Kathy's fascination with death, and she's got this kind of morbid curiosity. She seemed to be enjoying the public hanging.
Yes.
Heathcliff is there. So it's a way of putting our two characters in proximity to each other. But you're right, we never return to a wider setting than just the two houses. And the two houses are remarkably stylized. So they look
Oh, yeah.
they look ridiculous. Like the Wuthering Heights house looks like something from Mordor. And then goodness knows what's going on down at, I think it's Thrush Cross Grange where the Lintons are. And that looks like something from Bridgerton.
Yes, it does. But I actually quite like that. I liked the like completely wacky architecture and just shiny colors and stylized. I mean, the wall of skin was a completely bizarre idea that I don't know where that came from.
Oh, that was
But
yeah, there were some weird choices in this. I liked the references to the doll's house and the sort of
like shiny red tiles and stuff, I think worked well. It kind of like they used red as a color reference to blood a lot, both as real blood, but also as like kind of like her dresses. Her dress got covered in blood, and then the next scene she's wearing like full blood red skirts and stuff. It's like they use color and material, like the shiny materials or the things in an interesting way that I actually did enjoy.
yeah, there was a lot of like latex and stuff in this, very, very much. And the sets are completely opulent. Like at one point they show us Edgar Linton's bedroom, who seems to be moonlighting as like the Wizard of Oz. Like, do you remember we saw his bedroom and it was like fully green and gold? I was like, what is this? Like, I don't know, some of the sets were really, really out there. But we spend a lot of time, as is obvious from the film, in people's bedrooms. So I guess
Yeah.
they needed to be. Shall
Yeah.
we do our categories?
Sure. Yeah. Go on.
What are they again, man?
All right, we'll start off with badassness.
Okay, how badass is this film? So this category is normally reserved for our films, books, TV shows that have, a significant amount of battle scenes, physical combat, large scale aerial battles in Star Wars. We should say that these films are complete, or this film is completely absent. But I don't think we even get one sword fight. I don't think we even get a punch thrown, do we?
Oh yeah, we do. There's obviously the dad and everything is
Oh yeah,
violent and yeah, there is violence, but it's violence on a kind of personal scale. There's nothing grand. It's yeah.
yeah. There's no training sequences with bows and arrows or anything like that. But is the film badass in the sense of, are there people in this who are putting themselves on the line, who are taking personal risk, who are doing things that are sexually provocative? Sure, 1,000%. Yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe
And
it's that.
we haven't really talked about the secondary characters, but I actually did find Nellie a reasonably interesting like kind of antagonist in the story. Yeah, I mean Nellie was just one of these interesting characters that in a way is quite badass. She's like taking into her own hands her situation, which is quite a bad one. She's like brought into this pretty terrible household as she doesn't have her own family or prospects, and she kind of manipulates the situation around her to make sure that she's able to have a reasonable station in life. And she at least in the film she messes things up for Kathy and Heathcliff, but she kind of knows that she has to. So Yeah, kind of an interesting character, I guess.
Nellie was one of the characters where the most artistic license had been taken from the book, I
Yeah.
felt.
She's
She's
essentially the narrator, right, in the book in a way.
for one of the frames, for one of the narrative frames, yes.
Yeah.
And for this, she's repurposed as the sort of lady's maid to Catherine. They give her a bit of a backstory that she is a gentleman's bastard. They really kind of went out of their way to set Nellie up as her own character in her own right.
Mm.
And you're right, they create her as a secondary antagonist to, we've already talked about the fact that Kathy and Heathcliff can't be together because really they've put themselves in different marriages. Um, but Nellie is shown to have been someone who facilitates miscommunication, missed opportunities, who is seen to be intercepting their letters and hiding them or burning them. There are a number of points in the film where you were like, oh, the letter, or the other way around. And she was given more to do here, down to the point where there is that final exchange on Kathy's deathbed where Nellie kind of gets to acknowledge that she did deliberately want to ruin things for Kathy
Yeah.
out of spite. And I thought that was quite a nice way to wrap that narrative up. So no, she was well rehoused, I thought, within this particular narrative that Emerald Fennell wanted to create. Okay, what's our next category? Oh,
The thermometer.
thermometer. Again, right, this has to be a matter of personal preferences
Yeah.
because I think some people came out of this movie and just didn't find it their cup of tea at all. As in didn't think it was particularly hot or weren't particularly moved by Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi. This is so my personal cup of tea.
Yeah. No,
I
I agree. I thought it was hot. I thought it was hot.
thought it was hot. I was like, wait a minute, you're talking about people in billowing shirts in the rain, in the moors, and you're gonna like pour rain on them, and then you're gonna have one of them like climb in through someone's window.
Yeah, like
Yes.
longing and like can't be together, and yeah, no, it was hot. If you were giving it degrees out of 100 degrees, where are we placing this one?
Oh, I'm only going to give it like 90 to 95 instead of the full 100 because of the format, which is that this was a film, so we only had about 2 hours. So you have to go from 0 to 100 quite quickly. So you don't get the slow burn. You don't get the kind of, if this was a 6-part TV show, it would take them 3 episodes to even like touch one of their hands
Mm,
or something.
mm.
You have to get that really early on. I have to give props to some of the quite creative, like staged moments that I think are going to become quite, or have already become quite iconic from this film. Like I loved the corset grab lift up. Was I thought that was very
Oh
quick.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That was good actually. Yeah,
That was
yeah.
good. I don't know if that was improvised or, and obviously you've got a significant height difference between the two. So I think Jacob Elordi just sort of had to lift Margot Robbie up a bit. That I thought was great. Um, I just think the two of them worked really well together. You've got to have two actors who are really game to try stuff out, get the right frame, get the right light, let the camera be about 2 inches from them, and just basically stage those scenes again and again and again in order to create what you quite rightly called the kind of um, sex montage
Yeah.
that happens. The audience in our cinema. Well, okay, what did you think of the, I'm sure to be also iconic scene between Heathcliff and Isabella when he breaks into her room?
I mean, I thought it was interesting in that I think we kind of I thought Isabella was actually a really interesting character in that you kind of think of her as at the beginning maybe very innocent and very um young and naive, but actually like they played the line of this like domineering kind of relationship really almost well in that the line that Heathcliff kept saying was like, "Do you want me to stop?" Like he was giving her permission to be like, "I don't want this" at literally every single moment. And so it created this, yeah, very uh and this was one of the scenes that kind of reminded me of Cruel Intentions, is like, yes, he has all the power and yes, he is taking advantage, that you can't possibly say that she didn't want it, right? Like you cannot say that. She absolutely did, and she made that very explicit. And it's an interesting, essentially like a kink kind of dynamic that they created, that showed that she wasn't not aware of her situation. She was told explicitly what was going on. She knew that he didn't love her. She knew that he was only doing it because he wanted to make Kathy jealous, and she wanted to be a part of it. And like, fine, go for it.
I thought that scene was brilliant because the joke is so firmly on the audience at that point, and that's why there was so much enjoyment coming from the cinema that we were in, because every time Isabella sort of nodded along like, yes, please. Yes, please. The audience were thinking, well, look at the situation. Jacob Elordi's like climbed through her window or whatever's happened here. He's right there. And she's kind of going, I'm in. That's fine. Yep. I'm good.
Like, literally do whatever you want to me.
Yeah.
That's it.
And there were people in the cinema just going like, yep. Like, I thought, oh, okay, this is clever. I get it. This is cleverly done.
Yeah.
So I thought that was good. So no, I'm going to give this a firm 90 to 95. What about you?
Yeah, I think I'd be 90. I think I don't know that the relationship will go down as one of my my hottest pairings of all time. But yeah, it was very well done, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I agree. It's not going in the Super League, but very, very good for what it was.
Yeah, and then our last section then, how full is our obsession fuel tank?
Oh, well, this is interesting. The kind of dialogue about this has been very all pervasive. This is everywhere right now. It's all over my social media. Every single news outlet has felt like it's released a review, a second review, a larger thought piece on it. We've been talking about it. We managed to get together a sizable group of people to go to this. It feels like it's very popular right now. How much of an obsession is it? I guess there are people who are real die-hard Bronte fans. I mean, we should say this is Emily Bronte's only novel. So this isn't something where you can have read book 1 in a series of 9. But I suppose you can be extremely obsessed with your Victorian and Gothic literature. But there is a clear division between that obsession and this piece of art that we're talking about here.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's going to make me want to go and like read the book or like go and dig into something further. I might listen to the soundtrack, but yeah, it's probably like a quarter full tank rather than anything else.
I think that's entirely it. I want to get the soundtrack out. I already did that in the Uber on the way back. I was like, I still feel like I want to spend a bit more time sonically with this. I'd quite like to watch it again. In fact, no, I definitely want to watch it again because I just felt like I let the experience happen the first time, and that there have been so that I didn't see. I was normally watching one person, whereas I want to go back and sort of be able to zoom out a bit next time. And there'll be it looked like it was so visually rich that I bet I was missing 80% of what was on the screen. So I definitely want to watch it again. But is this going to be something that I obsess over and rewatch 100 times? Probably not.
All right.
Did love it.
Yeah, it was great. We would recommend it. We would recommend it to people who aren't going to take literacy accuracy too seriously, want to have a fun, slightly intense time.
Yeah, for sure. If you feel like you want to be part of this conversation, even if you want to be the person that hates it, there is space for that. Go and see it, and then let us know what you think.
You've been listening to the Fangirl Diaries. Follow us on Instagram at Fangirl Diaries Pod. And do share us with any of your friends that you think might enjoy the podcast, and rate or review us on Spotify or Apple Music.